Welcome everyone to the Emergent Essence Dynamics free webinar on March 8th, 2018. And the theme of the webinar is, are values really that valuable? Tips and traps for values-based coaching. And on the call, we have Alina from Romania. We have Vinay calling from Basel, Switzerland. We have also Kate calling from Toronto, and Darcy calling from Toronto. We have Philippe calling from Luxembourg, and we have Alina Andonova calling from Hamburg, and just joining now is Sona. Welcome.
Hey,
Hi.
Thanks. My Wi-Fi is not great, so I'm going to turn the video off.
Okay, great. And Sonal is also calling from Toronto, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Okay, we've just started. I'd love to hear from each of you, just very, very, very briefly. Two things. One, and welcome Brian from Vancouver, right? Hi, Brian, welcome. Good, we're a nice full group. We've just started. So if each of you could just briefly speak to how you are working with values and where do you believe they can become a trap? I'd love to just get a picture of how everyone uses values, or if you don't use values, say that, and you can even say why you stay away from them. Some people love to use values and other people are suspicious of them. So
maybe I can start?
Yeah, go ahead, Philippe.
Okay, so the way I use values in my coaching mainly is two ways. First is to help my coaches find motivation, motivation towards their goals, and it's also let's say in case of emergency, if they lose their way, towards their goal, it's one of the best ways to for them to grab the value that's in there, and it helps them find guide them and find motivation again. And the way I think it can be a trap, and I'm actually experiencing this right now with one of my coaches, is when they go more for the ideal of the value and less towards the real goal for themselves.
Okay.
So when they more as a goal itself rather than a way to get them to a personal goal.
Okay, so the value itself becomes like a goal to achieve rather than being used as motivation. Okay.
Yes.
Great, great. Who else?
Okay, I can go next. Basically, I use values in the initial discovery sessions, like to know what the person is, what kind of values they are living, as to get clarity about themselves. And as said by Philip as well, the trap is many times if they can get confused between values and ethics, and really to understand instead of being what are their real values, what idealistically they should be doing. So that's one thing, is that's the trap. And the second thing is many times the values can be changing depending upon the circumstances. I mean, priority is not necessarily values, but what comes, what can really motivate, or what that can change depending upon the circumstances, and that can sometimes be a trap.
Excellent. Good. Who else? I'm just collecting the information, and then we can put all this together. It's great that you guys are already bringing. Who else?
So Darcy. Oh,
go ahead, Darcy.
Thank you. I'll be quick. So
sure.
I do use values in my coaching, and I found somewhere on the internet, I found this really great worksheet for people to think through. You know, what values did my mother have? What values did my father have? What values and what are the values I think I live by, and actually what are the values I would like to live by. And people, it's like, oh, I never really thought about it. So you inherit some things, and if you don't do that self-exploration, then you can inadvertently think you believe something that you really don't. So it's a really, I found that to be a really helpful exercise. And I guess sometimes I think about myself, I get very attached to my values. Well, I love freedom, so I have to have freedom. Well, I don't actually always have to have freedom.
Great.
So you can get kind of distracted by them as well. So I think, a healthy focus is good. And then you kind of, in this case, I can let it go. So I'll leave it there.
Great. So those are two traps: getting too attached to the value and not being clear on what's inherited or borrowed. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your own. Okay, great. Cool. And Brian.
Yeah, so echoing some of that, definitely using values for clarity and often to help, because a lot of times people haven't spent the time getting clear on some of these things and knowing what to do with them, or even experiencing them. So that's often pretty shifting for people. But then on the other end of the scale is that really that clinging part to it, or like you were saying around freedom. Darcy, that you're going to cling to the value, and then all of a sudden it becomes like this, it becomes a principle and becomes a justification. So then it really works against people. So I think, it's that double-edged sword of it. Oh, it's the door in, and it can lead the way forward, and it can cut things off on its way through if you're not sure what you're doing with it.
Great. Excellent. So we're going to look at the various functions of values, and we're going to look at the various traps that can happen and why they're traps, and then we're going to look at antidotes, okay? I'm glad you're naming lots of stuff here. Who else?
I'll continue.
Yeah.
I'm not a coach, as I'm working, I'm managing people, and I've seen people in projects practically fighting one another in the name of their own values, forgetting what is actually important and what are the values of that project or of that environment. Or I also have seen people motivating their lack of performance based on certain values they were not left to live by. So values are sometimes used like scapegoats in projects under pressure to whenever it starts and lead to huge discussions, huge debates, all of them practically consuming the time of and energy of the people around.
Great. And you're seeing that happen in the company environment. So when you say that somebody's performance is based on values, that's based on the company values. Personal values.
They are explaining that their own values practically hindered their own or a certain type of behavior or a certain type of attitude, which was desirable in the project.
Yeah, okay. So
of course within the ethics of the project and so on.
So you get a values clash. Yeah.
Yes, a values clash, exactly.
Great. Good. And that can happen also internally in a person, not just on a team with a bunch of people together. And so great. Thank you, Elena. And who else?
This is Kate. I would say that I've run into about half of the problems and traps with values that people have named. And as a result, I found myself working with values in a very intuitive way. I don't do any formal values work in my coaching. When I'm hearing values that I think would be useful, I name them and reflect them back. And when I'm hearing values that I think are falling into one of these traps, I use them in a very, very different way to sort of get into the question of what is actually going to serve this person, and are they beating themselves up and pushing themselves into traps.
Okay. Great. 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 Anything else to add there on, or are there other traps you've run into that haven't been mentioned? Okay, or I know you muted yourself again. I can.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. No, I suppose the one that I see most often is commitment to a value at the expense of everything else around a person.
Great. Okay. That's a great way to put it. Commitment to a value at the expense of everything else. Great. Who else? Just got a couple. I'd love to hear from Sonal, Cesar, and
Hi, it's Sonal. So I don't have a lot to add from what's already been said, other than sometimes I run into the topic or the conversation around values doesn't actually resonate with the client. So they don't actually, like, it doesn't, huh?
What's their response then? How are they responding to that when you bring?
Well, it's just sort of like, you know, I might name, as Kate was saying, I might name that there's a value here and what is it, and it's just sort of like, yeah, and that's it. It's like, it's not like, doesn't feel like an area where they actually want to go deeper into.
Okay.
So it doesn't happen all the time, but it happens occasionally.
Okay. So sometimes they're just not connecting with the ideas of values or the idea.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Cesar. I had some conditioned reflexes when some clients are asking me back, what are you talking about? I mean, I don't know. I never thought about that. I don't label it like this, you know. But it's a good place to start, you know, to poke for responses and to let them search for whatever they call values, you know. But this is one thing, and another thing is I tend to react, you know, like following my values, you know, dancing with their values, and it's I'm more responsive, seeing or spotting values when I have some values in that direction or something to work with. But I don't know the value thing. I don't get it.
You don't get value. You don't get what it is.
Yeah. I don't get it.
All right. I'm going to redefine values with you guys here, and you might hear me talk about values in a very different way than you've been used to. So I did want to hear from Alina Andonova as well. If you have.
Yeah. Well, a lot has been mentioned, and I do value work.
Yeah.
There are sometimes values which I would rather call unhealthy patterns, like getting appreciation from others has been called a value.
Yeah.
And how to work with this as a coach without offending the client. And yeah, I'm curious about the other traps that have been mentioned.
Okay, great. So unhealthy patterns masquerading as values. Okay.
Yes.
Great. That's a good one. All right. Well, I'm going to be talking about everything from the EED perspective, and that's emergent essence dynamics. So it's useful for coaching, it's useful for facilitation, it's useful for conflict resolution, it's useful for relationship work. And mainly what it's doing is it's facilitating a person's awareness so they're more contacting source rather than outsourcing, okay, for power. They're having more self-governance. They're governing themselves. That has them access their resilience, their creativity. And then from there, we're also looking at what are some base patterns that are emerging in their thinking and behavior. We can shift the patterns around so it feeds back into their resilience, as opposed to the person feeling empty or fragile, seeking control or validation from others in order to create this control cycle where they're constantly fighting the world or asking for validation, or, you know, these are our personality patterns, okay? So EED is a way to start breaking those patterns so that the person is not dependent on the world or others, but they now can co-create with the world and with others from a resilient place. That's another way to define what EED does. And so this definitely applies into coaching. It also definitely applies into the role of values and the role values play. One thing we're doing with EED, like I mentioned, there's fractal patterns. So everyone has little core patterns that keep repeating on small scales and large scales. And we identify those core patterns and we start shifting them, everything starts to shift. So how somebody's using a value is going to indicate what kind of pattern is going on underneath. The other thing we work with is people function in polarity. That means a duality, world of opposites. And the way polarities work internally is we're always moving from emptiness to fullness. We want to fill ourselves up. We want to be more, get more. We're driven to go faster and further. It's because we want to fill up this underlying feeling of emptiness, which is caused by separation or disconnection. So there's always this human drive to reconnect with our source, okay? Whatever we believe our source is, it can just simply be the source of life, source of inspiration, source of intelligence, could be divine source. But we do have a drive for unity, drive to connect, okay? And what that does is it gives us a feeling of completeness. So our inner polarities are always trying to move towards feeling more complete, moving away from the feeling of emptiness. So when values are used for motivation, they can help give us the drive, but if the value is based on emptiness, it's just going to aggravate the feeling of emptiness. It will get them to drive harder, but you take the value away and suddenly they lose the drive, right? So what we do with EED is we neutralize those polarities so they can move off the polarity, moving off the feeling of emptiness and into the feeling of source resilience. Then they will operate differently. When they're not driven by fear and emptiness, when they operate from resilience, they have more freedom and choice in what they do, more creativity, even the freedom to do nothing and simply accept what's going on around them, right? So those are the three main things. We work with fractal patterns, we work with source energy and resilience, and we work with polarities, okay? So that's where I'm coming from. When I speak of values, then I'm looking at, are the values coming from resilience or are they coming from emptiness? All right. Let's actually define what values really mean. Like, what have you been trained to know about what a value is? If you were taking your certification exam and they said, what is a value? How would you define it? Or you could say what values are not. You could say what they are, what they're not. There are certain distinctions to make with values. Any ideas from you guys? Yeah, Brian, yeah.
throw something out there,
Yeah.
so people can push off this. A value might be what people hold as being most important, or as a core internal motivator, and also values as words may be structures for things that don't have structures.
Great. What else? What else is out there about what a value is? What makes a value a value?
Well, I would say they are more individualistic. So they can be different from individual to individual. So they are more, the motivational or guiding force. And as you asked, like what it is not, is like they are not ethics or which is defined by, say, society or something like society.
Great. So they're important. They're very personal. They are not ethics. They're not morals. Okay, and they're very individual. Anything else to add?
I would say what's also really important in there is fulfillment. That if it's not just theoretical, when people don't get their values fulfilled, if their life doesn't fulfill their values, then they feel like they want to shout.
Yeah,
they feel really torn apart. But on the opposite, if their values are fulfilled, then they really feel like they're in paradise. It's really fulfillment.
So fulfillment. So values lead people towards their fulfillment. Fulfillment is fulfilled by values being honored or fulfilled. Okay, great. Anything else? What do values actually give the person? Let's say the person is honoring a value or they're connecting to a value. What does it give the person?
It gives them energy, motivation to get to some goal.
Okay, great. So in order to simplify working with values and to avoid many of the traps where they can get co-opted, meaning seized by personality, ego, fear, emptiness, here's how I define it from EED. And in fact, EED doesn't use values. Surprise, surprise. We don't. I'll tell you why. But values, to be really simple, values are energy, and that's it. It's just energy. It is a trigger it's a trigger for energy. That is it. That's how I would define it. And if you just keep it at that, a value is a trigger for energy. What's more important is the actual energy, how that energy works inside the client, how the client sustains and creates it. That is more important than the value. The value is just the trigger button. So if I have a value of chocolate, great. When I connect with chocolate, the taste, the texture, that has an effect on me. That's creating an energy in me. When I sustain that, I enter a state of being, which then opens my mind and awareness to possibilities, and I'm experiencing more and more resilience and well-being. Chocolate doesn't do that. I do it. But chocolate certainly is the spark that opens the door. Did you guys get it? Oh, I'll unmute you there, Darcy. Okay.
Except the chocolate isn't a value. So can you give me an example of, so for my example, so for freedom, if I say freedom is a value for me, and when it's not honored, I get that there's a drive behind that, but I need an example of how it's freedom is a trigger.
Great. Can I work with you then, Darcy?
Sure.
I'll work with you in a typical way, and then I'll work with you in more of the EED way.
Yeah, sure, perfect.
How to Because I've taught the coaching courses in that it's a traditional way as well. I'm quite familiar with how it's taught on how to spin out a value. So Darcy, you have a value of freedom. What is freedom to you?
Oh, it's openness, I would say.
Openness. And what does that mean to be open?
Well, it means freedom. Like it means, right? So,
okay.
So it means, well, it means, I guess, I would define it by saying that if I feel like I'm trapped somewhere,
mm-hmm.
That's when I notice my value of freedom is not, to use CTI, like, it's not being honored, right? Like
not being honored.
I get very panicky.
Very panicky. Okay, let's bring back the value of freedom.
Yeah.
And then what's different in you when you reconnect with freedom?
Well, I guess I feel more, well, I would say actually for me, then I just feel like I can take a deep breath.
Okay. So it's openness, it's taking a deep breath. What else is there? If there was a color to the freedom or a sound or even a movement?
Yeah, it's more taking a breath. It's having space and a breath. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm creating like a value string, like lots of words associated with the value of freedom. So you've got breath, taking space, openness. Okay. How would you rate that on a scale of 1 to 10 as being, how important is it to you?
Oh, extremely important. I'd say an 8 or a 9, probably.
9. And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how much is it currently being honored in your life?
Well, it's funny, just before we got on this call, I was thinking, oh, I'm so glad I have the space to do what I just needed to do. So it's very present with me.
Very present. Very present. Like a 6, 7, 8, 9?
I'd say 7, 8.
7, 8. What would move it from, say, a 7 or an 8 to 8.5 or 9?
A whole lot of money.
A whole lot of money. Okay. All right. Let's say you have some abundance, some money, and then what is possible when you have that freedom?
Well, I guess it's cheating a bit to say everything, but what's possible? I can see, because the realistic part of me says I'm pretty much as free as I'm able to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so if we look right in there, what are the possibilities you already have with your freedom? What do you appreciate in your freedom?
Well, that sounds like a muddled CTI question.
Well, I'm actually doing.
Yeah, which is
yeah.
why I get stumped with CTI coaching sometimes. Because it's so amorphous. I more tangible.
Then let's stop here, because.
Okay.
You're saying this is feeling amorphous. What else is feeling not enough with what I'm doing with you?
Well, it just feels like it's so not specific enough, and the questions kind of turn on themselves, and then I don't know what the right answer is. Okay. So then I get stumped. Yeah. Now,
what I'd like to offer out there for those of you out there, because I'm trying to do my best to reproduce, what I've heard typically done. Now, is anyone out there, can they do a better job?
No, this is the trap that I fall into. Exactly what just happened here. That's exactly what happens, and then the client goes, I don't know.
Okay, so I'm just putting it out there just in case, because my stomach is turning as I'm doing this, because I'm thinking there's so many other places I can go, but I'm not going there, right? So, and I just want to know if anyone else has, you know, they say, no, I can do better than that, because I'm opening the floor to that. If you're okay with this, then I will do a second demo with the added stuff in it, okay? Okay. All right, let's back this up. And then we can discuss the differences between the two, okay? And thank you, Sonal, for saying, oh, geez, you know, this is where I get stuck, because I used to supervise people, and I would hear this again and again and again. So, Darcy, freedom. I'm going to start with the exact same question. What does freedom mean to you?
Yeah, so all those things that I said. So openness, ease, I guess I'd add in now possibility as I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's stay with the openness and ease. And just as you say those words, how are you affected internally as you say the words?
Yeah, so I'm taking a deeper breath.
Okay, what's it like when you just allow yourself to breathe deep and feel the air?
It's awesome. It's great. I should breathe like this all the time.
Yeah. And now what's happening as you laugh? Because there was a shift in your energy. You just opened up more.
Yeah. I just, well, I'm thinking actually about gratitude.
What effect does that have on you as you shift into this gratitude feeling?
Well, it's interesting because I would say I have a convoluted, complicated relationship with gratitude. I feel like all these people are saying, oh, you should have a gratitude diary. Okay. I'm thinking, I don't want to do that because it's a have to.
For now, Darcy, we're not going to do anything about it. You don't have to have it.
But it's making me realize. I realize as I'm talking about it is that I can just do gratitude and openness and freedom and my deep breathing in my own way, which also honors my value of freedom of doing it my way. Yeah.
Okay. So now you've got another energy coming in. Let's do it my way. How does that feel different from openness and freedom?
Well, it's better if I can put a judgment on it because it's more personal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is it like when you have full authority over everything around you or just inside you? It's your way. It's not about gratitude journal.
Well, it actually then gives me more freedom.
Good. Now what are you experiencing inside?
Oh, I've lost your sound.
Now what are you experiencing inside? Because there's a new shift here. In fact, when you say, okay, that brings me back to freedom, when I do it my way, I'm back into freedom, which part of your body is most activated or responding the most to that?
Yeah, it's here. It's still here, right? In my lungs, in my heart, it's all there together.
Okay, now just focus there for a moment. You've got yourself in your lungs. The breath comes in, it's you. You know who you are. How does that feed your well-being? Just to know, this is who I am.
Well, it's it's everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's all I need.
What's it like to know that? This is all I need, actually.
Well, to use an irritating word, it's very empowering. It's a very irritating word to me.
Yes,
but
I know.
Yeah, it's.
Let's throw out all those coachy, sweet, sugary words, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's liberating, right? Like it's just, I don't need anything else. And then it's back to freedom, right? Like I've got everything I need. Yeah.
There you go. So you've got everything you need. There's a liberation now. What is the experience of that kind of liberation? What kind of energy is that inside you? How does that live in you?
How does that live in me?
Just how it's currently happening.
Yeah, I guess I'm picturing something like a rock.
Okay.
Yeah. like a steadiness,
You got a steadiness. Great. So that direction of energy is what? Going down towards your feet or some other way?
It's kind of all in the middle.
All in the middle. Great.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy with that kind of weight, steadiness, like a rock?
It's a comfort.
Comfort. So it brings you comfort.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And then from that comfort, when you are steady and you have comfort, what does that enable you to be or do?
Well, just more of me.
More of you. And how does that start showing up already? What else starts to come alive?
Yeah, just more.
More. Okay, great. What is it like to just experience that right now? How would you summarize the experience with key characteristics? Whatever's happening now. We're just recording it, so you could activate it again at any time.
Yeah.
By the way, where does the rock where is it located in you, that rock?
Yeah, it's all here, like in my middle.
Good.
Right?
How does that affect your posture, or how does your body wrap around that rock?
Well, I like the wrap around. Yeah, it's kind of like tentacles sound kind of gross, but it's kind of like a oh God, it's like yeah, it's just like oh God, I can't believe these words are like a warm hug. I'm not a hugger, but it's
oh my God,
it's like a hug, right?
It was like a warm hug. Okay, great.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't matter what we think. It's how it's affecting you. How are you affected when you receive the warm hug? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, when you've got that solidity, the rock, that warm hug coming into you, what does that create inside?
Well, it's like a comfort zone, I guess, is what popped into my head.
And then when you're in that comfort zone, what naturally starts radiating out, or what do you naturally start giving or generating?
Yeah, it's just more of me.
Great, more of you.
Yeah.
So what's it like when you're in that place? If you could give it a name or an anchor, whether it's a word, body center, or a posture. It's for you to remember so you can activate it.
Yeah, I think the combination of the rock and the arms, I think that's a good.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, drop it. Shake it off.
Okay.
Okay. Done.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, bring it back. It's like a button you're pushing. You activate the rock. You've got the arm.
Yeah.
What's the immediate feeling you have?
Well, then I just breathe deeper. So yeah, ease. Yeah.
You've got ease. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Now, drop it again.
Yeah, but it's nice.
I know it's nice, but you know what? Someone's going to come along and take it away.
Yeah, well, they'll try. Yeah.
Okay. Now, bring it back into the rock. You've got the arms, the ease, and the breath. Okay. Now, what's it like when I ask you to do things my way from this place?
Well, you can ask me.
Okay. What's the reaction right there?
Well, it's just, you can ask me. And I guess if it makes sense, I'll consider it. And otherwise, I'll just carry on doing my thing.
How does it feel to say that to me?
Oh, it's fairly easy for me to say that anyway. So,
now I say, no, you're trapped.
Yeah.
Now you're trapped. I'm limiting you. I'm taking away things. I'm taking away your money. I'm even taking away your freedom.
Yeah, that's not so good.
Now come back to your breath. Come back to the rock and feel the warm hug. And what happens to you?
Well, I guess I'm thinking I'm enough.
What's it like to know that?
it's a good reminder.
Okay. And so how is it then if I start taking things away, even your freedom, when you go into the, yeah, I'm enough, again, the deep breath, the warm hug, what is something I could never take away, or it's untouchable? What do you notice is showing up there?
Well, you can't take away me, so.
What's it like to know that?
Yeah, well, there's always a workaround, I guess.
Now, how is that freedom?
Well, because I know I can always figure something out. There's always something I can do.
Okay. What's the belief you now hold in yourself?
Yeah, just a reminder that I can figure this stuff out.
Okay. So this experience that you've had now, how will this be useful to you going forward in, say, a few days, a few months?
Yeah, I guess having something tangible, like I'm a Taurus, I need a thing,
yes.
A sensation, right? A thing.
Yeah.
So to have the feeling of, the rock and the arms and to remember the breath is very helpful to reconnect. Okay, great. So if we move this up back to motivation, action, how does this state of being contribute to your daily actions, your daily projects? Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I guess that it's an inner resource, that I have access to whenever. And that's, when I start to feel trapped or that I don't have any choice, that I have something I can tap into. Okay. Great. Okay. Awesome. I'll stop it there. Thank you. Thank you, Darcy, for being wonderful, natural client, coming with resistance and depth. So I love that. Thank you. What did you guys notice was different in what I'm doing? One thing I'll say is we didn't stay on the freedom word for very long. And what made this different, or move it to a different level? Because again, I said the value is a trigger.
I felt you were digging deeper into her feelings rather than I'd say less asking questions, so keeping her in her mind, and more playing with what was coming along. So more digging and playing with what was coming along.
I'm bouncing off every reaction she has, and I'm choosing to see those as sparks of energy, and I open that energy up and see where it goes. I want her to be both aware of it, and I want her to be experiencing it so that it's tangible. One thing that goes missing when people are developing values with people is they make it a mental exercise. And that it loses meaning and it doesn't get rooted with the person. So it becomes a concept. And if they forget or lose the concept, they've lost the value. And then they feel like, oh my God, where's my value? It's like, I had it in my hand, where'd it go? So, so it's very important. I kept doing an opening and then an anchoring process, right? The energy. Other things you noticed where I took this, or even went beyond levels of value. Yes, Cesar.
Yeah, I was looking like hunting is like you are catching the prey, and then you let go, and then catch it again, and you search for the repetitive patterns in your client. I mean, you don't settle, with the surface story. You just go deeper in order to underline very clearly what's repetitive there. What's repetitive, and it's like a circle that it shrinks until you
getting to the center. Yeah. And I let the client go round and round. So the client, as they enter a new experience, they're going to like themselves or the experience. I invite them back. They experience it again, a little more. It's almost like dipping their toe in a hot bath. They need to take their foot out so they can then put their foot back in and go a little deeper. They need to take it out and go deeper. For example, she's saying, this word's coming up and it makes me want to, I don't like this word, but it's coming, right? Like warm hugs or empowerment, So I'm giving her full permission, one, to not say the words if she doesn't want to, right? I'm not asking her to conform to any particular way of being. I let her judge herself, and then we peel that aside and see what's the pure experience. So we're taking away taboos as well. This also is what distills the value into a pure source of energy. It's a way of peeling away what got borrowed or inherited or any sense of obligations, like I should have a value of this or should have a value of that. I'm getting them to connect to the pure source energy and stripping away any associations, false associations with it. One key question I'm asking is, what are you enjoying? Another key question is, how does this feed back to your well-being? What I'm doing is I'm taking anything conditional out. At the beginning, it was a little conditional. I have to hold on to my freedom. What if I lose my freedom? If somebody takes it away, I'll stand stronger. Don't mess with me. Once that value plugs into a source resilience, it's like she said, it's like, I'm in a space where I don't need anything. That's a clear telltale sign of resilience. It means I am everything, I've got everything I've got, plus I've got the imagination to create from the situation. Therefore, I don't need anything. Got it. When that is a direct experience, the client knows and experiences that they are resourceful and resilient. It's not an idea. That's where you want to take them. The value is an entryway into what's the energy, how is that a resource, how does that come from your own source resilience, not from something else. If we don't plug it back into that source resilience, they're going to put all the power in the value. Saying, I need my value, I need my freedom. If somebody steps on that value, I've lost my freedom, I've lost my power. You guys get it? You've got to re-internalize that they're the creators of their experience. Anything else you guys noted there on how I was working or what might have seemed difficult or strange? Yeah, go ahead, Kate.
So what I noticed was the repetition of taking her back into the place and then challenging her with it, sort of threatening it with her and getting her to practice connecting to that place several times in the session with you so she has better access to it at another time.
That's a later stage of anchoring. Once it's anchored, I don't leave it at that. I want to test its integrity. I want to see that it's taking hold. That further anchors it. There's a phenomenon in our learning process where if we deconstruct and reconstruct, it's actually stronger every time we reconstruct it because it becomes less conscious or less effort. It has less effort and it becomes more automatic. If I do that 3-4 times with her, it really does take root and take hold. So I start with little challenges and then increase it a little bit, increase it a little bit more. With neuroscience, with learning, if you want to rewire new neural pathways, it's not just repetition, it's repetition with slight variation and slight resistance that makes the brain not go into automatic pilot when it's passing through that new neural pathway. It's got to do a little bit of work to cement in that new pathway. And when it's done from a place of pleasure or humor, it makes the groove way deeper. If you think of a neural pathway as etching a groove like on a record, if it's done under stress and anxiety, it's going to break apart. Brian, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to also say, like, I've seen you do, and I've listened to you do this before, but it really stuck out to me this time just how catalytic you were, in that in a way you didn't interfere with Darcy embedding and anchoring at all, like the way that I was originally taught to work with values, like I'm in there and I'm doing it, and you were so catalytic and transparent that you're not getting in the way of her doing what she needs to do or wants to do with it.
No.
So as far as the process goes, you're actually expediting that process by not stepping all over it. I just really clued into me. Catalytic, transparent were the two words that came through, and I was like, okay. that's really simplified, it's pure.
And that is what we're doing is the way we work with the EED model. We have what we call loops. These are repetitive behaviors that the facilitator uses, and the primary loop is to articulate or provoke and then immediately catch the response and invite that response. So I'm not interfering, meaning I'm not steering her response. I'm working from her response. But in order to get a response, I've got to poke. I've got to do something. I can throw her a curveball once in a while, and see how she responds. So, and then transparent, yes, I tell her exactly what I'm doing. I tell her what it's for. What does that do? That calms her down so that she doesn't feel like I'm misleading her. And it's a way of checking in if she really does want to go there. I'm listening for her response to that too, So yes, testing the integrity is important to see if it's really sticking. The other thing I'm testing for is she clinging to it or using it to escape somewhere? Those are two resistant behaviors. On the polarity, there's the empty side and the full side. And when we start reaching the full side of the polarity, when we start moving away from that fulfillment, we'll either grab it to cling to it desperately, or we scramble to move towards it, escaping whatever we feared that was behind us. So we search escape, and then we cling and overcompensate. If I'm clinging to my strength, I'll stand up, I'll start, standing taller, and I'll force my strength upon you. That's a clinging behavior. If I'm searching for strength, then I'm going to be running away, I'm going to be fleeing, I might even be fighting to try and pull strength into me, okay? That's what I mean by cling and escape. I can use my value as a shield in that way to escape. I can use my value as a weapon to cling. Does this make sense to you guys, what I just threw at you? So I'm testing to see how she's using it. And I keep returning her to that place of resilience where actually the value doesn't matter. It's she that matters. The value is simply an expression or an aspect of herself. If it's grounded in resilience, I'm reducing the chance that she's going to start turning this into a rule, a principle, an ethic, or a condition. Condition meaning making life conditional. How are you guys doing with this information, and what does this spark up in you guys?
What do you mean by making life conditional?
Any sentence that contains if, when, or but. Okay. I feel free when. I'll only have my freedom if. I do feel my freedom, but, you see, those are conditional phrases. So we're looking for getting them into an unconditional place. I took it a little bit further and I asked her a question: what is something no one can ever take away from you, or a variation of that? Thanks, Brian. Brian's saying he has to sign off, so cool. You'll get the recording so you hear the last half of it.
Troy, I wanted to ask you something very short. It was a moment in your coaching session when she seemed like, fighting back to you and challenging your methods.
Yes.
And you immediately said something like, I'm putting you obstacles, or it was like a very quick reframing. I looked into this session through my own limiting beliefs, as a coach, and I cannot do that. I don't know why. Maybe I'm too much in the head, but it was brilliant. It looked like from a distance, it looked like you had some sloppy acting, and then she spotted, and you immediately said something like, I want it to be like this. I'm putting you obstacles. And she immediately shifted back into initial energy,
Was that at the end, or was this in the very first demo?
I don't know. But you said something very, very straightforward, that you are putting obstacles in there.
That was towards the end. I'm saying, okay, now you're trapped. Okay, yeah. I said I'm testing how the this takes hold. Yeah, I'm transparent about that. Yeah, it's not to be cruel or mean. Did you want to respond to that, Darcy? How it felt when I was doing that?
Well, I guess in the moment I was thinking, like, am I coming up short as a client because I'm not pulling anything else up, right? Like, it's just more of the same. But I now that you're talking about it, then it's, yeah, so you're anchoring it, so you're making sure that I actually mean what I say.
Yeah.
That it's true. So when you said that, like, I'm as long as people, like, I appreciate transparency so much. It's another one of my values. So when you told me that's what you were doing, I'm like, oh, okay, so I can play with that. Sure, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the way, I'll say what I was doing in the demo, I may not normally stay that long. It's for demo purposes. I wanted to show you some variation and also exaggerate the process a little bit so it's clear to you guys. That could have been done in 5 minutes, okay? I mean, I could have moved on from there. But I really wanted to show you also how, because normally what I'm seeing from people is the value gets mentioned, it might get expanded on a little, and then immediately we move into possibilities and action. And it's not grounded, and it's not an energy that the client owns. It's more like, let's let the value do the work. Let's let the value drive the energy. And if they lose the value, they lose the drive, right? So I'm spending more time having them become really aware in how they're experiencing themselves once they're connected. And then I'm trying to make the connection to the value disappear so that they're actually connecting to themselves. It's like they start thinking all the energies from out here, and I gradually connect them to it and transfer all their awareness back into themselves and loosen their grip on that thing, and they can let it go. And then now it's themselves. It's almost like taking the training wheels off. The value or the trigger are the training wheels, not the actual thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, it seems like, so what I wrote down when you were speaking a few minutes ago, and my interpretation of it is my values are an expression of my source.
Your source.
So like it's a much bigger question about like, this is my version of being in the world, and this is what I'm here to I don't know, to do, to be, to like it's a much bigger, like it's inside out instead of outside in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In a way, you're tricking your client by starting from outside in.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Then shifting the orientation from inside to out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's important to be able to allow yourself to work that way. It's like a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, it doesn't matter how you start. You could, if you want, give them a list of 50 pre-printed values. What do they start identifying with? But what you're doing then is you're zooming in and you're peeling it and distilling it into pure energy source. Then from the pure energy source, you're constructing how they're acting and expressing and believing and perceiving. But you got to find ways into the source, right?
Yep.
And so then what they thought were values, they can actually let it go. This addresses what Vinay was saying. I think it's about values that change. So if you're connected to a source, your source, which is, let's say source, which is all potential, all being, and at any time it can express different facets of itself. And if you're well versed on how to keep accessing the source and keep the connection, keep connected with source, no matter what mask you wear, it's easy to change and shift gears. It's easy to be compassionate in one situation and highly value that, and then switch gears into being very demanding and highly valuing that too, without feeling like you're compromising your compassion. When you're connected with source, that has to do with feeling resilient. If it's conditional, you're going to be left with an either or. Do I be compassionate now, or do I be demanding? If I'm too demanding, I'm going to lose my compassion. If I'm too compassionate, I'm going to lose, my rigor. So yes, so Sonal had to leave. Alina Andonova has to leave as well. She's saying thank you. You guys will get the recording, so you'll hear the rest of this. This is why resilience work is so important, because a lot of times we don't realize clients might get into a highly resonant state, but it's still conditional, which means it can deflate, it can pop. If it's going up, 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 and it's conditional, it's going to come down, because life balances itself like a pendulum, right? When it's resilient, they can be in a high state, but it doesn't matter. They're not personally identifying with it, meaning, oh, I'm in this high state, therefore I'm a good person, therefore I'm having a good life, therefore this is fulfilling. Rather, I'm enjoying this high state, I have lots of creativity, but they can go in the low state and still feel okay and resilient and say, I can create from this too. Nice when I'm having a high state of energy, but it doesn't mean I'm fulfilled. You guys follow that logic, or what does that produce for you? Any thoughts coming from there, or any questions coming from there?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
How is this different from connecting to your captain for the CTI version of so connecting to your captain and making your decisions while being connected to a captain?
Okay, so what I'm usually seeing happening, is whether it's a captain, crew, a future self, any kind of a persona, right? A wisdom persona, creativity persona. It always starts usually externalized, okay? Just like a value is externalized. It's something outside myself. Again, it's the same process. So you meet your captain, right? And you want to create the connection, but you keep wanting to ask, what does this do to you? How does this reinforce you? How does this feed your well-being? Right? What is it bringing out of you? And what are you producing in yourself now? So that gradually the captain fades away, or it is absorbed inside. It's very important that the person knows they are the captain. They created the captain in the first place. I can't tell you how many times somebody visualizes a captain and then they think the captain is more powerful than them and has more wisdom than them. And say, you created the goddamn thing. Come on. We so easily give our power away to other things, even to our own imagination or our dreams, right? So it's really important that you create this loop out, back in. It's got to come back in. So that I would not advise asking the question, so what does your captain say? I'd say, reactivate that energy of captain. Feel it flowing through you. And now what's the wisdom coming through you? You see, I'm directing my language so that they stay within themselves, not that they're projecting outward to something else. I remember having a student that was in such a terrible state, he was feeling so dejected and down on himself. She said, my captain threw me off the ship. And I said, what are you going to do about that? And she goes, well, I'm so, unworthy. I said, you're so whiny. If I were you the captain, I'd throw you off too. And what's your reaction? She goes, oh, screw you. I said, great. Let's work with that energy.
Yeah, I mean, your captain's an asshole.
So, I brought out her rebel and she found her strength again, right? In the rebel. Again, anything that comes out, it's usually reactionary. So get the source energy and then peel away the reactionary aspect of it. So the only way to do that is by connecting more and more to the resilience that's behind that energy. And the more they become aware of the resilience, the less reactive they are. So it's gradually having them uncling from condition. That's why we react, because we react towards or against conditions, okay? Captain threw me off the boat. I'm pissed. I'm sad. Well, good, because you're a whiny person. Oh, screw you. That's reactionary. So you can see they're ping-ponging in a polarity, right? All I'm doing is I'm working the ping pong, but catching the highly resonant, strong energy and then plugging that back into a resilient place. That's the basic process. So Cesar, that's to answer your question. I'm bouncing off of Darcy and her reactions to get her swinging on her own polarity, but using that to plug her into a resilient state, and then peeling away the game of the polarity, so she's just anchored in her source.
I have an additional question, if that's okay.
Yep. Well, by the way, so Philippe, this is the same work for values, perspectives, visualizations like captain, crew, anything, even a perspective. Oh, the birthday cake perspective. Okay, great, but it's not about the birthday cake. It is about the resilience you feel while in that perspective. So, okay, go ahead. Ask your question, Philippe.
Yes. What if someone comes with the value of, okay, I'll take two extremes I've met. I really feel myself when I'm using other people, and other people are here to make me stronger. Or on the opposite side, I love it when I'm being used. I love being an object and being manipulated. And okay, so how would you, with this method, how would you deal with that?
It's very, very easy, Philippe. I'll tell you. The one thing you've got to do is put your taboos to the side. Mm-hmm. Okay? So let's take an extreme example. I love to dominate. I love feeling stronger than others. I love pushing my boot on their face, right? Making them pay, okay? Now, the situation and the circumstance, you'll say that's unethical, that's immoral, that you have lots of judgments around it, okay? And they are acting from an extreme end of the polarity. So we're not feeding that. But it does take, there's two things that are happening. It does take strength and energy to do that. And they take pleasure, which then feeds back to their strength. Okay, so there's like an adrenaline rush, okay? Fine, get in the position where you're more powerful. And then I get them in the pure experience of it. I've stopped their focus on what they're doing to the other, but what is actually going on inside them. And then we gradually let the situation fade. So it's like, again, you're purifying and distilling the energy. And then once it's back to source, then we can rebuild the body so it's more in resilient strength, take away the need to be strong, and they simply are strong. The secret to strength is an essential quality that I call vulnerable invulnerability. It's a state of being where I feel like I'm invincible, I cannot be harmed, and therefore I can be completely open. It's as if the bullets pass right through me. So there's nothing to defend and therefore nothing to attack. That is actually that's the essential source of strength, vulnerable invulnerability. I can start a crazy action, get them into the experience, the source, then rebuild their body so they actually feel that fullness of the strength and the resilience of it, and then they don't need to exercise power over others. And I would in fact test it where I'd put them in the submissive position and see if they have to fight that. Okay? The same with the other way around. If somebody is being very submissive, what's the strength, energy, and pleasure they take from it? Pure experience. Plug it into resilience, rebuild the body in a neutral space where there's no need. And I start testing it. I can put them back in the submissive. They'll say it doesn't feel the same. I can ask them to be dominant to see if they can be. Then I'm neutralizing the polarity. How does that sound to you, Philippe?
Great. I love it.
Yeah, great. It's also, this is what we do. We are always expressing from source, but on its way out from source to surface, it can get distorted. And so all we're doing is we're following it backwards to source and then carefully reconstructing it so it's channeled in a more pure way. And we're taking out the distortions. These are the hang-ups, the attachments, the conditioning, okay? What we teach in EED Module 2, which is about embodying essence, we work with polarities and distortions and how to neutralize them, and then we work things out. The Module 1 is all about accessing and building resilience and anchoring. Looking at time. Okay, so let's see if I covered everything I wanted to do. So I'm just going to list here basic traps of values. So a value is good because it's a trigger or an access point to resilient energy. You use the value to open the door and you start digging around for the source energy. You leave the value out of the picture at that point. As soon as you've opened the door, leave the value alone. Now you're working with source energy. Once they've got the source energy, they can rename it. You build a state of being, and it's more about a state of being than a value. From that state of being, they can take action. Okay? So traps are when the value becomes more important than the experience. The trap is when the value holds the power and the client doesn't. Okay? Trap is when the value becomes conditional The value only works when. The value only works if. Okay, the value is working, but. Okay, so listen for if, when, and but. Take away the condition. If it's conditional, it can be used as a shield for excuses or to escape. It can also be used as a weapon for attack and defense. Okay. I'm sorry, I can't talk to you anymore because I need to honor my value of self-care, and this conversation is now too disturbing. That's shield. And it becomes like this card, like, how dare you challenge my value? You know, I worked with my coach and I'm working on self-care. You know, don't you try and undo that work, right? It's a threat, okay? And an excuse, okay? So listen for if it's being used as a shield or a weapon. That's because they're clinging or they're using the value as a way to escape something. Another trap is when the value starts mixing in with or blending with their personal tastes, their personal preferences, okay? Because that's all personality-based, ego-based. And ego, again, is based on conditions and polarity. So a value, if it starts getting collapsed with tastes, preferences, it starts becoming rules, it starts becoming, you know, ethics or moral conduct, it's no longer value. Now, values certainly inspire those things, but again, when it starts to turn into conduct, we're back into conditions. Okay?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes.
You've mentioned a few times resilience. Can you please explain how you connect resilience to the energy?
Yeah. Here's a simple way to play with resilience. So resilience, let me define resilience. This is your spark of life. It's the will to live. It can overcome anything, okay? It allows you to be adaptable, flexible. It's your permanent nature. It's permanent and timeless, okay? So 3 qualities. It's permanent, timeless, unconditional. And the other thing is that it is self-governing, self-generating, and self-perpetuating. So this energy is circular. It feeds back to itself. So if you think of a give and a receive, okay? This energy gives me something. I receive it into myself. I can give that out and it's received out there. And then that comes back to me. So questions like, what does this bring you? How does this feed your well-being? What does this reinforce in you? Are good questions to close the loop back on itself. Because a lot of people don't realize, they don't take the time to take energy back in. They extend energy or they withhold energy. Vinay, you're saying you have to go, so great, you'll get the recording. And does that help you, Philippe, with what I mean by building resilience? You're going to build energy, but in order to build it as resilience, it's got to feed back into the well-being of the client and reinforce their own strength or well-being. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if I summarize the way EED is using values, it's a catalyst or a trigger or an action point to energy. And that it's the energy that counts, not the value. It's the client who sustains the energy, not the value. We use the value to enter the energy. We use the energy to enter resilience. And then we build that back out. Okay. There's a special technique we use, which is I call the vertical loop. And this is based upon this. It's how to circulate and get this circular energy going where it's self-generating and self-perpetuating. There's 4 main elements to it that works. But when the client is experiencing this, they're actually quite calm, but they're full. And I can throw anything at them, and I get these reactions like, huh. It's like everything that's happening to them is a cartoon. It's not like they're blissed out, but it's weird that I'm not attached. It's like everything rolls off like water. So we're getting them into an unconditional state, and then we can build them back into action from that point. Once you activate desire, you're activating action. But when you're in a resilient state, there's nowhere to go, nothing to do, nothing to be. So it's the place before desire. Source. What are your remaining questions or challenges, or what are you now putting together that feels like new, great, inspiring information for you? Alina.
For me, it was a lot. It was a lot.
It really is.
But very interesting again. Actually, now I am in that place where I don't have any word to say. I need to digest.
Sure. Okay. What's the general impression then you're left with in how you feel, or how you feel about the information?
You know, what is funny is that I had a couple of weeks ago a discussion with my son about his desire for freedom. It was very, very much, yeah, the topic. I could have relate to it. And at least it gave me some hints where I went wrong in approaching him, and of course it also gives me some you know, very, very basic tools, because I don't feel I can at this point use them well, but at least I have an idea how to disarm him into, out of his belief.
Yes. Okay. It takes practice. It takes training.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You've got some concepts now you can play with, trial and error, see how it goes. You know, if you ever have questions, you come back to me. Or if you ever can make it over to Europe, you know, to Paris, Munich, come take you know, the courses. Module 1 is enough, you know, to deal with the relationships.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Who else?
Thank you. Yeah.
I want to know just what you're taking away, what feels useful, what's inspiring, and if there are remaining questions.
Hey, Troy, this is Cesar. I remembered a program that Lion Goodman had about the belief closet, and he was practically destructing every lens that we have as beliefs, and this peeling off everything that's volatility, I would say. I think it's very, very hard thing to do, at least for a beginner coach, and we definitely need to make it under supervision and not by reading books or I mean, this is EED program for, I mean, it's a very masterful tool, and in the same time I think it's very powerful, and we kind of have a obligation to master our craft, because it's not something easy. You can easily push the client into wrong directions if you don't do it right, I think.
Well, what I'm going to say is this approach may sound masterful, it may sound complicated, but it's actually the opposite. It's very, very, very simple, but it's not simple to master. What I do in the trainings most of the time is I'm training you how to uncomplicate your brain and uncomplicate your listening. There's so many things happening that we miss because we're looking for something more interesting or better or more complicated, when actually we simplify ourselves to go with the simple and obvious. And then, of course, I give you guides and maps and models on how things work in a circular fashion, repetitive cycles. It becomes very, 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 very easy. What that allows then, so then you become more disciplined and aware, but then you can handle all the curveballs that get thrown at you. And you don't need to feel destabilized when things go off track, because you know how to bring it back on track. That takes practice. But I will say, keep it very simple. Keep it into simple, resilient energy. And even when somebody resists, they're using resilience. This is in one of my previous webinars, that it takes strength and resilience to resist. So rather than focus on what they're resisting and how they're resisting, focus on what's the energy they're using and approach them with acceptance. Okay, you don't like the word empower. Great. I don't need you to choose another word, but how does it already feel when you don't have to use the word, right? That immediately calms the person down. It releases them. They come back to their center, because I'm neutralizing a taboo. Great. Philippe, Darcy, what do you take away now?
Well, for me, I think I'm a big believer. Who isn't a big believer in it? But basically that we have everything we need, and that the values really are just an expression, you know, and some, you know, and to, you know, if we're tapping, if it's from the inside out, then we have so much more freedom to use the energy that we have to serve the situation, to serve other people, to serve ourselves, right? It's very liberating, right? To not be locked into, you know, yes, you're dishonoring my value of whatever. Like, it's so not helpful. Like, I am dishonoring your value, and so now what?
Exactly. Yeah. We're always
right. You still have to, you have to deal with the stuff. So sorry. So here we are. So now what? So I love it. I love it.
That's great. And that's, by the way, what I just piloted our newest course on reconciling conflict, and that's exactly what it's about. So I'm stepping on your toes, you're stepping on my toes.
Yeah.
It's actually a game we're playing. So when we're resilient, how can we learn the game, master it, so we can really create from the game instead of suffering in the game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Think about this. So it goes from the inside out. And when you build that resilience and that enough liberation and acceptance, then you're in a state where now you can let it always also come back in and influence you, and then it goes back out. It's like a chicken and an egg. There's an in and out, and then an out back to in, and it's flow. It's a flow. This is how we then co-create each other. As soon as we become rigid, we pinch the flow. We stop it in either direction. And then that's when we start clinging and fighting.
Yeah.
How about you, Philippe?
Well, I like very much the idea of not focusing on the value, on something which is only partial and more how can I put that, limiting in a way. Because it's it always has its limits, its limitations, also, and going to something which is more limitless. So what's behind that? What's the real source energy, which is far more complex, actually more
rich
and more authentic and more authentic too. Yeah,
exactly.
More unfiltered also.
Exactly.
I really like that. Yeah,
that sums it up really well. Play with the values, but get behind them. The values themselves are limited, so get into this limitless space behind them. There's a source that the value came from, right? Mm-hmm. The source, the value is the end expression of source.
Yes. I'm wondering if there's probably still value in values in the
Yes.
sense that it is also a way to communicate what your needs are and what your feelings are and what's important.
Exactly.
Well, first to others through a coach. Sorry, to yourself through a coach, and to others because it gives you a vocabulary. But I totally agree that it's really important to go behind that and to see what's the real source and the real energy behind that, and
Yes.
yeah, which is pure. Yeah.
When you've done that work, so in your sessions with clients, you want sure to work with values. They're trigger points and anchor points, like trigger points at the beginning, anchor points at the end. But when you go behind, you build, you get into the source energy, you explore that limitless place, then you repackage it as a value. It has more meaning for the client. It has less power over the client, so the client owns it. And then they can be a guidance system and a compass point. But what they're actually doing is now they've got a panel of buttons of different energy that they can access. And it's the energies that count, not the values themselves. Mm-hmm. Then they can be more flexible in a situation and more conscious and aware of how to conduct themselves. So it takes using values as a guidance system. This takes values to a different level. Okay, what I'm showing you today.
Mm-hmm.
What you were getting before was more of a it could be a surface level. It's still useful, but it can get co-opted. That's the problem, is that it can get derailed. When you use it as a trigger for source energy and then use it as an anchor point to access source energy, there's more stability and sustainability in the way. So I'm not saying don't use values. I'm just saying really get behind them. Yeah. Great. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I will be sending you a thank you email shortly with the recording. And also, if you're interested to learn more about resilience, source energy, polarities, et cetera, I'm giving you also a special offer on the courses that we're offering currently in Munich and Paris and in Toronto. Okay. So there's a special discount of 15% off the first module and about same 15% off the entire series, which is actually better than the early bird anyways. And you have your choice of anything on the schedule with this deal. So, but it only lasts a week. So make a decision. And if you want to come, we'll be happy to join you. The next module 1 starts in Munich, March 16th. And then we have one starting April 6th in Paris. And then we have module 1s happening again in the fall. So it was great to have you. I'm glad that you learned a lot. Also, I want to thank again Darcy. She had to leave, but I want to thank her again for being a client. And thank you for all your questions and observations and for everything that you shared. This was great. It was very rich. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much too.
Thank you, Troy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.